This has been a while, so I've got a few guests with me, and it's going to be Flow State, Taylor, and I got Kat, who often appears on Flow State as well. Tonight's topic is going to be about Beebe's 8-function model, and then transitioning from that 8-function model into Socionics, because this seems to be an area of pain for a lot of people. So I want to kick this off with talking to Taylor specifically about, he brought this up to me. I've been noticing it, but I really hadn't been paying much attention to it. But he's noticing a lot of people are recognizing that this model isn't actually working, and they tend to be moving into a different model, and they're trying to find something to hold up their sense of identity. So I want to toss it over to you, and Taylor, if you can just share your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. So I lurk around several Discord servers, and I'm really only active regularly in Transcendence, but I'm in a lot of them, and I spend some time listening to conversations. It's something I'll put on sort of like a YouTube video or whatever and listen to a lot of times. And there's a lot of younger guys on there who have learned MBTI, or even worse, they've learned C.S. Joseph's system, and they've developed an understanding, an identity, a way of interfacing with the world that is based on that. Then they start moving on and try to branch out, and they realize that they've got a lot of shit to unlearn. And I know that I learned sort of or Franken typology when I first learned it, and I had to do unlearning, and it was unpleasant. And I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like to learn this shit under C.S. Joseph. Like, thank God he wasn't out there teaching that bullshit when I was learning it. So I'm empathetic to it. The problem is growing, really. There's a lot of people trying to sort this stuff out and trying to sort it out on their own a lot of times, because it's kind of embarrassing.
Right. So, Kat, I know that you've ran a fairly large server for a while. What have you noticed with people coming from alternative 8-function models that are derived from Beebe, and then being able to move it into Socionics understanding? What is your experience, and then what do you typically recommend for these people?
So most people who come into the server, they kind of have like the hodgepodge variation, which is also, I guess, what I learned at first. Also, I think I kind of tried to learn everything at once. And the biggest problem that I see with that is that a lot of people do come from C.S. Joseph's model, which I don't personally know, or they'll use, is it Beebe or Beebe? And there seems to be a lack of consistency and understanding. Like, they don't even seem themselves to really agree on the same things. So it ends up being like a lot of confusion, and then it's hard to kind of place people into specific types, or it's hard to get an understanding of the same types, just because it seems like, I guess, the definitions that they're using a little bit of everything, it seems like. And because I think they themselves don't necessarily, even if they're using the same model, they just don't really agree on how it works. But I don't know Beebe or anything. I just know that most people who come into our server end up wanting to learn Socionics and transition into that, just because they see more consistency there, and they like how it's got kind of a neater structure. So this is just, subjective from my server, but most people end up wanting to learn Socionics or transition into it, just because they see that it can kind of do the things that those other models do, it seems like. But it also seems like there is a lot more consistency once you get to talking about it in a group. So that's been my experience with that.
Great. So one of the things is that Taylor and I will be hosting a free webinar that will address a lot of these questions from people transitioning over from Franken typology into Socionics. We're actually going to not start like a lot of people, they just can't compartmentalize and start from scratch. So we're going to take those models and we're going to actually start adapting that. And we're going to kind of prelude that with this webinar coming up on Sunday. The link is in the description. It's free. So click that link, sign up, register, and then show up on Sunday. It's at 2:00 Central Time. So click the link below. It's right below in the description. Make sure you click that. And then we'll actually do that on Sunday, so you'll have plenty of time to get ready. But take notes, because it's going to be intense. It's going to be quick. It's going to be 45 minutes, and we're going to kind of blast through it and give you good understanding of how to actually A, compartmentalize, and B, learn the nuances between different systems, and then start moving into a Socionics model, because there seems to be a lot of questions around this.
Yeah. We're gonna start with the basics, hit it quickly, and then do a little Q&A afterwards. But this problem continues to snowball, right? Because you get one bad misunderstanding, and then you've got somebody mistyped. There's a zillion mistyped INFJs, and that problem just accumulates as people think, well, you act like this person, and that person's, and I'm sorry, INFJ. Did I say J or P?
Yeah,
INFJ, right?
It's P Socionics, so you're good.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. But my thought when I hit you up yesterday was this I've watched this problem kind of grow for a while, and we should probably just meet it head on, because it's needed.
So something else also came up in my attention when Taylor and I were talking yesterday, and it was that when I learned MBTI, and then I learned, Beebe's model associated with MBTI, and I said, okay, MBTI is a 4-function model. Beebe actually moved it to an 8-function model, and that's all theoretical. MBTI actually doesn't adopt that model, so enthusiasts of MBTI take that model, Beebe's model, and adapt it to MBTI, and then pull from different sources to try to articulate some kind of taxonomy, all becoming like Franken typology in a sense from different people, and everybody's arguing what is what. There's no real consensus. That is where I didn't realize that people couldn't compartmentalize, because MBTI is in this box right here in my brain, and then all of a sudden Socionics, it's like I don't even pay attention to that box. There's this box. If MBTI didn't exist, nor did Dr. Beebe exist, or any of those people exist, Socionics is still what it is in this box. And so my mind just deletes these other boxes.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, I had the biggest challenge with like understanding how people couldn't do that. And then Taylor's like, I don't think people can actually do that. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, I was just expecting that of people. So that's why I started hammering on so much nomenclature and terms and, sticking to standardization, because I thought people could compartmentalize and they were just being idiots. But instead,
I think that some can. I can. I just resisted for a while because I was lazy.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, it just doesn't end up getting done.
Yeah, that's I think where I realized that I had been approaching this not in the best of ways, because I'm expecting people to do that, and I'm like, I guess these people are just stupid. That's the only that's the only explanation I have for this. I don't understand why you can't learn something in its wholesome self and then understand that this is over here, and I can't understand that thinking.
Not everybody has good TI or 5 fixes.
Or 3 fixes.
What I realize now is that the mistake is on me, right? And it's like, okay, now in that webinar, when you click that link, we are actually going to talk about different ways you can work around the lack of ability to compartmentalize. So that way you can actually learn this effectively without pulling in all that junk. So click the link below in the description. There's a registration for that webinar. It is free, so make sure you click that. Now, the other thing is that I want to start challenging and pushing on this notion of the 4 sides of the mind. I really want to start challenging this, because my experience, and I'm sure Taylor can add on to this, Kat probably has some experience in the indirect way, tying this in from where a lot of happiness and enlightenment or whatever's derived. So I remember a video I watched, specifically C.S. Joseph had mentioned. He said that enlightenment, all enlightenment ever is when one masters all 4 personalities within their psyche.
What?
Yeah. So, yeah. And so I'm just going to start it off with that. And Taylor, you can add on. I'll finish my point when you add on.
Fuck. Okay. So,
I saw your expression. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
I mean, I've heard, I don't know if I remember that specific quote, but I've heard him say that, like a fully developed type looks like they're dual. So I, at my best, would basically be an INFJ. And that whole concept is so undermining and damaging, because people think to be healthy, they have to be what they're not, what their weaknesses are. And you have people living in their 1D and 2D functions, but they're valued ones. So they're sucking at it and caring. And it's really an unhealthy mindset to live in. So not only is it just not consistent with any typology, not only does it not explain its own mechanisms or workings, it like gaslights the user.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kat, have you heard anything about it?
I don't know about his theory at all. I've never watched his channel or anything, but I know that in the model that we use, you can't just force yourself to generate a bunch of information from your suggestive information element. So if you're trying to do that, you're simply not going to be able to do it. That's just not the way that you do metabolize information. And, you know, our base information element, it's 4-dimensional. It's a gift. We're given the gift for a reason. And yes, like we can offset some of that, and with experience we can learn to strengthen or develop our suggestive function, and which I believe we should, but you can't just force yourself to use it and create information for it in every scenario that you want to. So I just don't understand how that would work at all.
Right. So one of the things I want to add in here is that there's a preliminary. Anybody who's watching this video, I highly suggest that you stop watching this video, delete typology, erase your search history, and get rid of it 100% if you don't know yourself. If you have no understanding of yourself, get off of typology. Just get off of it. You're not doing yourself a favor. You'll subscribe to some kind of ideology that will have you adapt your persona and your personality and to start rationalizing and justifying behavior. So don't use typology as a way to identify with something, number one. And number two, don't justify it or use it to justify a certain way of behaving, because that's just going to get you screwed up. And it's really, really important. As far as the 4 sides of the mind go, it's important that you learn to accept your weaknesses and minimize them, make them non-strengths, but don't try to become something you're not. Right. So
you can't.
Yes. There was a particular thread I was reading earlier, and I'm not going to call any names out, but somebody was like, how do I strengthen this because I need it in my life? For example, in the Socionics model, right? Let's say that your base function is TI. Why would somebody with base TI say, I need more TE in my life? That completely goes contrary to that person's entire ego structure. It would not work. It would not be functional. And naturally, the mind is going to push against it. And it's like, hey, now I got to become somebody I'm not. That's the beauty of the Socionics model, is you naturally reject that information. Like, why would I want to add more SI to my life? It's like totally not what I am.
Well, not only that, like the other, what you said, like the beauty of the Socion is every single one of us has a really important role in society. So, you know, I think it's good to learn your role and, you know, to play up that strength and to help other people with their weaknesses. And that's just me, which I'm not saying don't try to improve yourself, because absolutely 100% try to improve yourself. I'm huge on self-improvement, but I don't think the way to do that is to try to force yourself to use your suggestive information element. You're never going to be able to do that in the way that I guess you would need to or want to, until you are around like your dual or your semi-dual or somebody who's really good at it a lot, and then you start to learn from extensive experience. You can't just create it when you want to.
That's one part. The other part is that when you subscribe to these type of ideologies that expect you to become perfect in every aspect, one thing it does is it enhances the ego. It moves you further away from enlightenment. The other aspect is that it teaches you to not be reliant on people at all. And we are a social being, right? We live in society. We need people, whether we want it, know it, think we don't, whatever. We are a social being, and we need to have interaction. These typology systems that subscribe to this idea that enlightenment is this mastering the 4 sides of the mind is absolutely ludicrous, because real strength comes from the acceptance of your weaknesses while enhancing and being able to leverage your strengths and adding to the role that you play in society. So true enlightenment is letting go of your identity or what you think you are entirely, and not trying to morph into this character, whether you want to call it super ego or unconscious or conscious like you think. And this is the part of the problem I have with Beebe's model, which we'll cover in that webinar. So make sure you guys, if you're watching this video, just popped in, click the link below. Make sure you get registered to that. Make sure you click the link in the description, get registered, because we will cover that in more depth. It will be fast, it will be intense, but we'll make sure to cover as at least some of your questions. There will be a Q&A at the end. I am not reading comments right now, so we will address your questions on that webinar. So subscribe to that webinar by clicking the link in the description. Okay,
I'm super excited for the webinar because I don't know the CSJ or the Beebe model, and I won't personally be implementing them, but I'm super excited to see where people are coming from. So I'm going to be there too. And if anyone just wants to brush up understanding or anything, that's definitely what I'm going to be using it for, even if you already know one of the models or the other ones. Like, this is really good just to kind of see how people using both, or the distinctions between both, like where that's coming from. So I'm super excited for it.
One of the other things that I think is I want to bring to the light here is that when people have identity issues, like they don't know who they are, they want to subscribe to these and they're misled or led astray, and it can create a lot of problems. What I've seen, like Taylor has seen a lot of these fallout people from CS Joseph, Beebe 8-function model, whatever, and coming over into Socionics, because it's more of a structured taxonomy and it allows you to accept your weaknesses and then interplay off of humans who are strong in the areas that you're weak. So they see it as more of a reliable model, and it's something that gives them a sense of peace. Look, I suck at this and this is okay, versus I have to be everything. I have to do this. I should be. Yeah, it's insane, right? So instead, you take these kids who haven't really learned their self, and then they're going to start beating themselves up because they feel like they have to be. They're unconscious, they're conscious, and then they're super ego. And the second you bring unconsciousness to light, it becomes conscious, right? That's part of what unconscious is. It's no longer unconscious. So I guess the ideology is that you take all these unconscious features and you bring them to light, and then you become all 4 types, and then you're an enlightened being. It's way more complicated than that.
But how
go ahead.
Yeah. How can you even do that? I feel like that if I tried to live in SI and TE, I would be miserable and I would be very neurotic and unhealthy. I simply am not able to sustain those things or do those things. And I know I used to be a person who I really wanted to do everything by myself and be fully autonomous and strengthen everything by myself also. But for me, I think it was like a huge point for growth for me to let go of that and be able to like ask you guys for help with things that I'm not good at, or if you guys need to ask me for help with something. And I think that a lot of people are kind of against doing that. And again, I'm not saying like offset all of your shit onto somebody else, but I am saying that if you're unable to generate that information for yourself and it makes you miserable or neurotic or stressed, maybe you're not meant to do that. That's just my take on it, because I simply couldn't live like that.
And if you think about how the culture where we live in, where you've got schools telling you when you're wrong, you got parents telling you what not to do, you got cops, you got religion is a huge one. Like in Christianity, you are flawed. I mean, just the whole Western world's mindset is guilt pushing, and people internalize the fuck out of that. And so then if you add on this system to that, it's just too natural a pickup to go, oh fuck, and to feel like you're being wrong or are wrong, and that's not the case.
So one thing I want to bring up that I'm sure Taylor can resonate with, as an Enneagram 8, one of the hardest things in my life is allowing people to assist me, right? It's like I want to make sure that I'm in control of every aspect of my life and not receiving assistance. But my path to growth is actually being innocent and allowing others to come in and assist me and letting go of the reins a little bit and stop trying to control and dominate everything in my life. So if I'm trying to become this 4 sides of the mind master, naturally it's going to embellish the sense that I don't need other people to help me. And so for someone like me, it would make me 10 times worse. Like, I don't need that. I need to work more on my NI, and I need to work more on my NE, and I need to work more on FI, and I need to work more on these things that I shouldn't be doing. What brings a sense of relief for me is knowing that there's people out there that help fulfill that aspect. And it actually gives me a strong sense of peace. Like, wow, thank God I can just not do that versus having to stress about doing a really shitty job about it and then trying to fix that constantly, because you can chase that tail for years.
That's not your role in society, and we're not meant to fulfill every spot of society. We're not the person that we're, getting food from. We're not our doctor. We're not our dentist. Like, we need different people in our lives to fulfill different needs. You couldn't possibly, this is kind of a silly analogy, but you couldn't possibly go to school and learn every profession to fulfill every human need that you have in your life. I think it's kind of similar to that. Do what you're really good at. Implement that into society, use that strength, and help the world with your strengths. You can't do everything yourself. It's a nice thought, and it's, even myself, that's something that I might like to do at some times, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, help yourself. Fuck the world. Like, help yourself. You'll be better. You'll be so much happier when you're not trying to fit in your round self into a square hole, or vice versa. But
one of the best pieces of advice I got actually from Taylor was that there was this, I naturally have had anger my whole life, and I've expressed it freely. And then society kind of hammered it into me that I needed to not allow it to be expressed. It was like this bad thing. And I still expressed it, but then there was this rebuke, pushback, like, oh, anger's bad. But I still expressed it. But internally, I'm like, was that the right thing to do? Or should I just hold back? Or was that the thing I needed to do? And then Taylor said, just allow it to be. And then I was like, okay, that was it. But one of the best pieces of advice is just allow it to be. Because if I'm trying to be this person that's the opposite of what I am today, naturally I would try to contain that. So there was this brief stint where I was trying to not allow that to be expressed. And that was like holding me back in a lot of ways. And then it brought me back to a place of peace when I felt like I could express it freely again. Like, okay, great. So it was a great piece of advice, which is opposite to what these typology systems, specifically C.S. Joseph, is teaching. So again, if you want to know how to transition out of this trap that's known as C.S. Joseph's type grid and C.S. Joseph model, make sure you click that link in the description. Subscribe to that webinar. Get started. It's free. So we will cover how to transition out of that into a more reliable and consistent model that teaches you to minimize your weaknesses and put you in a position where you're enhancing your strength and using your strengths to contribute to those around you.
And also, if you don't have that issue, but would like a clearer understanding of the models, we're not going to be as preachy or sort of, it'll be more about the systems, the typology, less about the personal, I guess.
I get what you're saying.
The well-being of it,
Right. Yeah. So it's going to be the webinar. If you guys have questions on what it is specifically, it's going to be focused on teaching you the technical aspect of how to take, say, extroverted thinking and moving that into the Socionics description or definition of what that is. So you'll learn how to move from extroverted thinking into extroverted logic, or black logic. You'll learn how to move from introverted thinking into introverted logic and the differences between the two, and how to make that transition without feeling a lot of resistance. That's the angle we want to take in this webinar, and we'll hit it fast and hard. So again, subscribe, get registered, click the link in the description.
I want to highlight also, sorry, real quick, that
yeah, please.
They, within different models or different taxonomies, they are defined differently. So when you are structuring yourself into a specific model or trying to figure your type out in a model, it is important to learn how they define things, because these models were not all developed together. So they do define things differently. And then, Socionics is using information metabolism. It's not just using cognitive functions. And I'm sure you guys are going to go over that as well, because I know a lot of people are interested in learning the differences in the definitions between the two systems.
Yeah, that's the one thing is like I will work with you to teach you to compartmentalize and learn how to separate it. And that's why a lot of experts in sociology will tell you clear your slate. Well, Taylor made me realize it's easier said than done for some people. So I will work on showing you how to do that in a way that's more effective than what I've taught in the past. So it should be brand new content. It'll be on a different platform. So you will not be able to watch it on YouTube. That is why it's important to click the link in the description. I'm reemphasizing that. It will not be available on YouTube. So click the link, register for it. It will not be public on YouTube. So make sure you do that. The other thing is, I don't know if you know this, Kat, but this model that C.S. Joseph promotes is you are 4 entirely different types. That's who you are, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
you're pretty much 2 different quadras. And
I don't understand how that would work, but that might be me also learning another system and trying to tie it back to what I know, and so it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
You're actually a delta and a beta. And so you're actually both of those. You're an LSI, you're an EIE, you're also an LSE, and then you're also whatever the hell the other one of that is. I think
EII?
EII, yeah. So
interesting.
It gets worse. I mean, maybe not worse, but there's more. Like the
well, how does he logically explain that?
He doesn't. It's not logical. That's the thing. It's meant to be very jargonish and get people caught up in circles. I spent a lot of time over the last, month studying Dr. John Beebe stuff. And what I've come across is that it's very restrictive, which is another reason why he's pushing it into 4 different types, right? He
does that? Or C.S. Joseph does that?
C.S. Joseph does that.
Okay,
because Beebe's model is very restrictive. If you have a nuance, you can't really fit into the model very well, right? Because you have these archetypes that are innate, that were originally kind of Jungian archetypes, which I think actually have their prevalence. But he was applying typology to these archetypes. Jung originally believed in like 1 or 2 functions. That was it. Like there wasn't this 8-function model. Beebe said, I have all these archetypes. I'm going to try to plug functions into that. So what happens is when these functions manifest, they manifest as archetypes, kind of like the shell that carries this function. And as a result, that function can only appear in that shell. So if you
what is the shell? Sorry.
The archetype. So for example, you'll only demonstrate, in your case, if you're ENFJ, you'll only demonstrate FE in the shell of the hero. Your FE will not be demonstrated in any other role.
Well, that's weird because in our model, the only time my FE isn't displayed is when I absolutely cannot use it and I use TE for a moment,
Right. Well, it's very different in that it's like if you're not in a hero role, then your FE will not be portrayed. Instead, unconscious or conscious or whatever.
So how would I just stop metabolizing that information in his opinion?
Well, you're thinking in a socionic sense. I'm explaining just the basics of what that concept is that Beebe had these really restrictive archetypes that really weren't practical, right? It was it had no applicability. So C.S. Joseph tried to make it more practical in the sense like, well, that's because that's because you jump from one type to the other and your super ego is like, well, it's because you're under stress. Where's my Harry Potter one? I need this to be better.
Oh man.
Taylor told me that he sent a friend or a server member of mine into the CSJ server once, and the guy came back with a type, and they typed him as his conflictor or something, which was weird. It was something like that. But then apparently the guy came back with information and said that the people on the server told him that if you're drunk or high, you turn into your extinguishment.
Yeah, well, I mean, he accused host Eric that host Eric was really ESTP, who became an ENTP when he hit a bomb. So apparently it kicked him into this this other persona.
Okay. I'm trying to. I'm not going to make a comment.
In his theory, any drugs or alcohol puts you in one of the other sides of your mind, which means that I would have been in a different side of my mind for most of my life.
Yeah, you were not, ESTP the majority of your life, Taylor. You were probably some other type and it depends. Like, what's the quantity of drugs it takes to move you from conscious to unconscious to subconscious?
But not all drugs activate your unconscious.
Let's say we'll pick one drug, right? We pick one drug. if it's like
Wow.
a good dosage, will it just kick you into the subconscious or the unconscious? Like, how much do you have to move from the subconscious to the unconscious?
Well, I know. Okay, to be fair, okay. Let me give some fairness to them. Drugs will activate a different part of your brain, but that wouldn't. And yes, like it could change your brain chemistry, I guess, like scientifically. And I don't know the science behind it, so don't ask me. But who's to say that every drug or every alcohol? Sorry, I'm talking about it like it's an item. Why would that all of a sudden bring your subconscious out? I'm not.
Or unconscious. All of them put you into the same side of your brain, according to this. Always. And
But
every
is that
drug,
scientific? That's not
No,
scientifically
it's not.
true.
I'm telling you anecdotally that Xanax and cocaine do not put you in the same fucking mind state.
Well, yeah,
You
sure.
know, like,
I mean, one's an upper, one's a downer.
but I mean, that's neither here nor there because drugs don't change who you are.
So
They don't change your behavior. But
I digress from the sarcasm. I'm going to take a step back from the sarcasm and digging at it, because ultimately it's not about all the nuances of that model. It just doesn't work. That's the bottom
I do
line.
think that golden pairs is worth a mention too.
Kiersey golden pairs?
No, I don't believe so.
I think that's a Kiersey thing, isn't it?
No. I don't think it is.
Where it would be like, okay, this is MBTI terminology, but ESTP would go with ISTJ, right? Isn't that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Kiersey golden pairs, I believe. I believe. I think so. Don't quote me because I'm not sure. I think so.
Well, regardless, do you think? I mean, he rejects duality and replaces it with golden pairs, and I think that opposing quadra swaps like that it's just.
Well, but in his system there is no quadras. So putting you with an INFJ, that's not necessarily an IEI.
Well, that
could
right.
be an EII or
there
ESI.
Is quadras in his system. He does subscribe to quadras. He calls what does he call betas? Crusaders? What was it?
Oh, I like that. That sounds like us.
I don't remember what it was, but yeah.
I've
but
got
the point
book
is
somewhere.
Yeah, I don't really care about his model. The point is that, at the end of the day, you cannot subscribe to being something you're not. And that is what the whole point of this is. I joked around here, got a little sarcastic, but the idea is that if you really want to learn how to have something that allows you to be you and accepting input from other people, then click that damn link in the description and get on that webinar, because we're going to show you how to do that.
Super easy to register too.
Yeah, it's just click the button and you literally just fill out the form. It's really easy and it's worth your time. Don't be lazy. Don't be like, I'll do it later, because you won't. You're going to be scrolling on YouTube, going down a YouTube wormhole, watching useless stuff.
It'll fall back in the row of tabs, the open browser tabs thing.
Yeah, and then it'll disappear. Do it right now. Do it right now. If you're watching this, do it right now. Like, click the link, get registered, because there are a certain number of spots that are filling up fast. So we want to make sure we get in there, because once we get to that point where it's full, you're not going to be able to see it. So, and there is a special bonus at the end of it. Some of you may not know that I've been writing a Socionics book. And that book, I will give you snippets of information that's in that book that is all original content. It has not been written anywhere else on the internet. It's 100% original.
And it's all in verse, so he's going to rap it while I beatbox.
Well, and I'll say I've seen parts of the book, and I'm really freaking excited for it. So
you will get snippets of that book, as well as some amazing content toward the end. But you got to stay through it, and you got to register, because if you don't register and you're waiting on YouTube, sitting around, you're not going to see anything. Nothing's going to appear. It's on Sunday, and it will be only through that portal. So click the link, get involved, make sure you get on that as quick as possible. So that is the other thing I want to make sure you guys do right now. So no more excuses. Just get on there.
And, listen to the 8s. Do it.
Yeah, just get it done. Like, just don't subscribe to taxonomies that are only going to cause more identity crisis.
But do subscribe to us if you haven't.
Yes, make sure you click like and you subscribe to this video as well. Make sure you subscribe to Flow State and get on the Transcendence Discord as well. I will post a link in that in the description after the video. It will be also in the link in this as well. So make sure you get on that Discord, because that is where you're going to get quality typology information that doesn't make you feel like a fool after you've tried 20 years of being somebody you're not. Don't do that. All right. So it's super important that you don't. As far as the last few things I want to hit is that the archetype thing I want to reemphasize, right? Because this is that restrictive component. So earlier I was alluding to that there is a certain shell that carries this function into existence, right? So you cannot, if you are not in a hero position or your heroes are not allowed to operate, you suddenly switch sides of your mind and you'll be doing something else based on the circumstance that is presented to you. Okay, so the circumstance that is presented to you is going to trigger some other archetype, like the trickster will come out in a certain thing. The certain other archetype, the demon, will come out during a certain external prompt, or sometimes it's influenced by drugs or whatever. The influence is all different, and it allows for nuance in the system to make the system work. Where Socionics has very little nuance. It's about learning in every dimension. Even your polar function or your vulnerable function can learn. It's one-dimensional. It can cause pain. It can be extremely frustrating, but it does learn. Every single information element, which is a misnomer to call it a cognitive function, by the way. It's information element. Every single information element can learn. And it is put into a function which has 1 to 4 dimensions. All right. And we're going to talk about that. What one dimension looks like, which is experiential, which means you learn through experience, regardless of how weak it is. All right. So the term calling it blind or whatever is just silly, because it's not really blind. It's just very, very underutilized, and it tends to resist information because it's inert. We'll talk about those terms as well on a very basic level, but we're going to hit through it so you can learn how different they are and how two things cannot coexist, and the systems are not the same, regardless of what you've seen online. They are not the same. They're very, very different, and we'll cover those differences as well. And one nice, smooth brushstroke for a 1-hour webinar, 45 minutes of content, 15 minutes of question answers. So if you have questions on the comments right now on YouTube, none of us are looking at them, because you need to subscribe to the webinar and save your questions for that. Okay. And we will not be open for questions on this particular video, because you need to get in there and stop being lazy and just do it. Right. All you got to do is open your eyes and sign up. Right. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to speak. Okay. But you can speak during the webinar. Actually, we can allow it to where you can actually speak if you want. But I digress. Taylor, you had something?
I think they can tell that that you've been a fitness trainer, and
I don't know what they can tell.
You know what I was laughing about? Damon's shirt says relax and Taylor says run up. And I was just noticing that, like, as an aside. I didn't notice it.
It's a duo. You got to relax so that you can have more mobility.
So
you
can
but
run up.
if you run up, you're going to get done up.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So you got to relax so that way they don't expect you to run up.
But it's a Hawaiian pattern, so it's really chill about shooting you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You got to relax while you're shooting somebody. That's the whole thing. It's all about keeping it relaxed and laid back, right?
Yeah, you got to have good aim.
So, exactly. If you're not relaxed, I mean, think about shooting a rifle, for example. If you're all tense and you don't got your breathing regulated, you're going to miss pretty bad. Whereas if you're doing long range shooting, it's a lot about breath. Your breath can control the trajectory of that ballistic pretty significantly, especially if it's over 600, 700 yards.
Why do you know that? Well, you tell me later.
Yeah.
Because that's like a lot of information on that one thing.
I like to shoot. What can I say? All right. So other than that, make sure you guys click that. We're going to end this live stream because that's what we wanted to cover. Let y'all know this is happening on Sunday. So click the link, get registered, stop being lazy. You don't have to do anything. Just show up, pop up on your phone. The link works. Just get on there. No more excuses. Just get it done. We'll see y'all next time, unless Taylor or Kat, you want to add anything.
Thank you guys for watching. Yes, everybody go register. I'm definitely coming because I need to learn the other stuff, not socionic stuff. So it should be really fun.
Right. Taylor?
Nope.
Run up.
All right. Run up. Relax. Run up or get done up. See y'all later.